Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with the Coach. Today, our friend Talent Dance TV says, Ramsey, do you mind doing a video about the importance of safety and control in applying strangulation techniques after what happened to George Floyd in America, if you don't mind? So, that infamous case of the police officer having the knee on the neck of this fellow for, 9 minutes? Something like that. Okay, if you are putting pressure on somebody's neck for that long, in that manner, they're probably going to die. As far as strangulation goes, we have two big arteries that run up and down the neck, the carotid arteries, and they take blood to the brain. It keeps us alive, keeps us conscious. And when we restrict those, what happens? We lose consciousness within a matter of seconds. If you keep holding on, well, in about half a minute or so, you could die. If you hold on for several minutes, you will definitely die. So as far as safety goes, when practicing strangulation techniques, for example, in a jiu-jitsu class, if you're in trouble, tap out. If you can't physically tap with your hands, verbally tap. Say, stop, tap, let go. Ah. And if your partner is doing this or making some sounds like that, let go. If you can't tap with your mouth or with your hands, tap with your feet. If your partner is tapping out, let go. If your partner goes limp, let go. As far as law enforcement goes, I'm not going to pretend to know what it's like being a police officer trying to apprehend a potentially violent criminal. But if you are a police officer and you are applying a strangulation technique, my advice to you is train in strangulation techniques so you understand what they are. For example, train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Why? Because that is a positional art that teaches you to control people who are being violent to you in ways that allow you to stop the fight without killing them. Is that the end-all, be-all thing all law enforcement officers should do? No, but it certainly would help. So, yeah, man. There are lots and lots of opinions about police right now. Everybody has an opinion, man. And so I'm going to tread carefully with what I'm going to say next, but as far as my opinion about police in the United States, I had some run-ins with the police when I lived in America. When I was living in the town of Provo, Utah, I graduated from Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, a city most well known for Brigham Young University. The Mormons, most people there belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's a church-owned school. The crime rate is fairly low in the state of Utah, except for voyeurism. I had some conversations with some police officers there, and voyeurism is very high. But after college, I moved to an apartment with some roommates down by the river, down by the Provo River, and it turned out that there were also some criminals in that area as well, some of whom also had shaved heads. And apparently a police officer was casing the area and mistook me for him, because all guys with shaved heads look exactly the same apparently. Because apparently, aside from the color of skin, the other thing people look at more than anything to determine what people look like is their hair or their lack thereof. Every guy with a shaved head out there has probably been compared to some celebrity or multiple celebrities who also have shaved heads or baldness. How many times I've heard people say, has anyone ever told you you look like Jason Statham or Bruce Willis or Yul Brynner or every other bald guy who's ever appeared in a movie or TV show? Yes. And have I ever been mistaken for a neo-Nazi skinhead drug dealer, violent sociopath? Yes, I have. So, at 6 a.m. one morning, there's a knock at the door, so I go and open it. A police officer brandishing a gun comes in, pushes me onto the floor, orders me not to move, asks me if anyone else is in the place while holding the gun to me. I want to know what's going on. He tells me to shut up. My roommate sleepily wanders out in his underwear like, what's going on? Oh, the police officer points his gun at him. I'm surprised nobody got killed because this guy was jumpy. Again, no warrant, no nothing. Just comes in trying to arrest us based on a case of mistaken identity. So, after running some background checks and realizing that we were not the suspects he was looking for, no apology, no nothing, the guy leaves. Later, some other officers came to ask us some questions about whether or not we had any information about the suspects out there. One of them was kind enough to explain the situation, that apparently the leader of this group of criminals out there was a neo-Nazi skinhead who also had a shaved head. He showed me a picture. Guy looked nothing like me, except for the shaved head. He actually had blue eyes. I got brown eyes, man. Some people don't see color. Some people are colorblind, man. Oh, seriously, my little brother is colorblind. Red-green colorblind. It's quite interesting. So certain shades on the red-green spectrum look similar or the same to him. Anyway, going off on a tangent here. But my opinion about police officers is that in some ways, police in America have too much power to do the wrong thing and not enough power to do the right thing. And a lot of people out there are crying and demanding defund police, which is what? Man, when I heard that, I started fearing for the future of my country, man. Fearing for the future of humanity in general if they're saying such a thing. No, man. If they were saying something like reform the police, train the police differently, something like that. Okay, yeah, sure, we can get behind that, but abolish them? The police in China are way different than the police in America. I remember I was reading some social media posts from some friends on Facebook, and they said, white privilege is hearing a police siren behind you and not being afraid. If that were the case, then I don't think anyone in America has ever experienced white privilege, because the police are terrifying in the United States. For most people, if you're driving along and you hear a siren behind you, oh, that's spooky as hell, man. I've had cops draw their guns on me. How many times? About 5 times. Barking orders, threatening to shoot. For no reason whatsoever. So yeah, man. Being scared of the police in the United States. Man, I get that. I don't know a lot of people who aren't afraid of the police in the United States. And it's not so much the police they're afraid of, it is the potential abuse of power. If you give a man a gun and you give a man impunity, allow him to walk above the law, there are a certain number of men who will abuse that power. Many won't, man. I grew up in a really small town. very small western town. 800 people there when I was born, about 1,000, little over 1,000 people live there now. It's one of those towns where everybody knew everybody. So you knew the police by name. You knew the sheriff by name. The sheriff was my friend's dad. My friend Ben's dad was the sheriff. And he was a nice guy. He was well respected. So when I saw my friend's dad walking around town with a sidearm by his side, I recognized this is one of the good guys. He's looking out for law and order, truth, justice, the American way. He's a hero, right? And that's one of the reasons that the Second Amendment works so well in a small town, because everybody knows everybody. If Bill down the street has a shotgun, you know what kind of guy Bill down the street is. You know Bill down the street isn't a violent sociopath, violent psychopath who's going to go shoot up a school. You know he's a good guy. In a big city where nobody knows anybody, that's a different situation. You don't know Bill down the street. You don't know who he is. You don't know what his character's like. And so people get scared. We fear what we don't know. We fear those whom we do not know. And when the police don't know you, that's when it starts to get scary. In China, it's different. The police here are like helpful, friendly Boy Scouts. Man, I kid you not. I'll tell you a story. So, when was it? Last year, they passed a new regulation in Shanghai that electric scooters needed a license plate. Before that, they didn't require a license plate. And so I had an electric scooter, and I was driving around, and this was the week that ordinance was passed. And so I go to a stoplight, and there are some police officers posted at the stoplights. They're giving out reminders to people. Hey, friendly reminders. You know, go to the police station. You can get a license plate. It's free. Here are the directions. And I'm at the stoplight. I don't see the police officers because I'm in my zone. I'm just trying to get to my gym, get to work, right? And I start to drive off, and this police officer, I don't know he's a police officer, he grabs the back of my scooter to stop me, to tell me about the city ordinance. And I'm like, what the heck? Is somebody trying to rob me? And so I reach back, because this has happened before. Somebody actually grabbed my scooter while I was while I was parked, and I don't know what they were trying to do, rob me or something. I was like, I don't want that to happen again, so I just turn around and push the guy. Okay. If this was in the United States, what I had just done would be assaulting a police officer, and the result would have been violent. I probably would have been lying down in a pool of my own blood at that point. At the very least, I would have been arrested. But, man, bless his heart, this officer in China, he wheels around, steps in front, he's like, wait, young man. I'm like, holy crap, it's a police officer. I'm sorry, sir, I didn't realize it was you. And he explains the situation in English. He sees I'm a foreigner. He explains in English. He's super polite. Like, excuse me, sir. He's calling me, sir. Here are the directions to the police office, to the what do we call that? The police station, where you can get a license plate for free for your scooter. It's a city ordinance now. He draws me a little map on a piece of paper. He's super polite, and it just blows me away. I'm like, thank you, sir. I appreciate it, man. And just the level of respect and civility and non-violence was just absolutely overwhelming. I was like, holy crap, man, what a difference. And I've had a lot of very positive experiences with the police in China. Not to say that they're all good. Of course, there are corrupt people everywhere. It's the nature of human beings. And when you give people too much power, some of them will abuse it. Some of them won't. But it's those ones who will. Those are the problem, right? The police in China do not carry firearms. Nobody carries firearms in China except for security guards that handle armored cars that carry money. Those are the only guys I've ever seen carry firearms. And in those cases, it's one guy who carries a single shotgun with a single round. And that's mostly just for show. Basically saying, hey, don't steal the money, okay? But yeah, man. Armored cars, that's the one exception that I've seen. It's weird. It's weird. And violent crime is extremely low in China, super low in Shanghai. Like, this is a city with a massive population, 27 million people. Official population, not counting immigrants, such as myself. But 27 million people in this super megalopolis type of city, man. And yet violent crime is ridiculously low. Nobody's afraid of going out at night. People are not afraid of walking down dark alleys. I remember when I first got here to China, I actually used to live in an alley. My first apartment was in an alley. I had to go down an alley. So I go down this alley. It's dark. And there's a group of young men walking down the street. And everything tenses up. Because that's the environment I'd kind of grown up in America, where you see a group of young men walking down the street late at night in a dark alley. And you're like, oh man, am I in for trouble? Are they going to try to jump me? And then I quickly realized it's just a bunch of nerds, just laughing, having a good time. And they walk by harmlessly, and I'm like, man, I don't need to live in fear. How interesting. What a massive difference it has made not living in fear as opposed to living in fear. So I know a lot of people out there are. A lot of people in America live in fear. When they are driving in a car and they hear a siren go off behind them, they prepare for the worst. They prepare for a very negative experience. They prepare for potential violence. If you hear a knock on your door and there's a police officer on the other side, in America, what do we expect? We expect the worst. Right, for the most part, unless, of course, you're in a small town like I was, and you know those police by name, and the policeman knocks on the door, and you invite him in for a piece of pie or something like that, and a genial conversation. Man, I don't have the answers. Could the United States function like China as far as the police? Probably not. Because again, the whole culture is different. The culture of violence is radically different. The police don't carry weapons here. Would that work in America? If you disarmed the police, what would happen? Probably nothing good. If you armed the police in China, what would happen? Probably nothing good. But yeah, this was a question about strangulation, wasn't it? Strangulation techniques. Man, if you're a police officer and you're wondering about this, because I know there are a few law enforcement officers who watch this, take a jiu-jitsu class. I would recommend that. Take a jiu-jitsu class. Learn as much as you can, because the more you know about how to control people in violent conflicts, the better. And jiu-jitsu gives you tons of experience controlling physical bodies that are violently resisting you. Sure, the contexts are different. Maybe that guy has a knife. Maybe that guy has a gun. Maybe that guy has some friends hiding in the shadows or behind his car or inside his car. Who knows? There are so many variables that you simply cannot train for in the gym, but more training is always better than less. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. Thanks for watching. Get out there and train.